Morning, guys. Good morning. Good morning. Hey, look, I'm really looking forward to this exercise this morning. We're going to take about 30 minutes to get this done, but this is really going to help you, kind of zero in that one thing of that one area of your game that if you nailed it, completely nailed it, that if you work on it for the next 30 days, man, some good stuff would happen. So as you get on to the call here, just go ahead and drop into the comments area where you are. Would love to know. And let's give this an extra minute or so before we get started. Make sure, guys, that if you haven't already done so, that you download and print out this little worksheet that I've got here for you. I've already started to fill mine out a little bit, but Tennis 979, good morning. Thank you for hanging out, John, as always, in Detroit. Thanks for joining me. But there's a link there that I posted in the comments area. If you haven't already downloaded the worksheet, go ahead and do that. And obviously print it out so that you can. Hey, Neil, how you doing? I'm doing well, thank you. Major Dan, thanks for hanging out, joining me this morning. Appreciate it. Good Monday morning to everybody. Seattle, Washington. The great Ian Farrar. The great Ian Farrar, who, by the way, is featured in this book that I've been sharing with you guys recently, The 4-Year Career. That if you're into looking at the possibilities of a little side project, income project, and if you're not, that's fine. But if you are, specifically network marketing, this book will explain it like no other book I've ever read. And the great Ian Farrar, who's joining us today, is featured in that book because he is not only a world-class cyclist, plant-based nutritionist, but all-around good guy. And so, hey, David. Thanks for joining. And guys, I'm going to wait one more minute. I know I said 8 o'clock. I got 8:01. I want to give one more minute here before we get going. Owen, yeah, man, download and print out. It should be. I'll go ahead and there it is again. It should be in the comment section. And, yeah, I've been kind of pumping this thing for a few days. You should have had it, but, maybe not. So, all right, guys, well, let's get settled in. We got a good crew here, and I want to be respectful of your time this morning, and let's get to it. So I'm assuming that you have downloaded and printed out the worksheet. And so what my intention here this morning is for you is to help you zero in on that one specific area of your game. And we're going to break this into 4 different categories: technique, tactics, mental, and physical. And the reason I want you to do this exercise is because once you discover what that one area of your game is, and you're going to find out by the end of it, is that if you were to take 30 days after discovering that thing this morning and really nail it and not get distracted by all the possible stuff you could work on your game out there. And look, if you're on YouTube, you know that YouTube there's billions of little videos about tennis technique and tactics and mental and physical that you could possibly work on. But that will not get the job done in terms of you raising the skill level of your game. And if nothing else, giving you some clarity about that exact part of your game that right now you got to get nailed. And you know what? Once you find out that one thing and you do it for 30 days, something else, because you're now into that habit of going for 30 days and just crushing that one area of getting it so much better, is you're going to get really good clarity about, well, what's the next thing? And I think the habit that you'll get into, hey, Tom, good morning. I think the habit that you'll get into, or the epiphany that you'll get, is that, 30 days is not very long. 30 days is not long, but it's enough time that if you identify one thing and just crush it, that you'll just start playing better tennis. I mean, there's no way that you can't. So, all right, guys. So, assuming that you've got your worksheet all set to go, let's start with the first column, which is technique. And I've got 3 different lines below technique. And you can fill out one of them, you could fill out all of them, you could put some more lines below that, that's fine. But here's what I want you to think about. What area of your game right now? And we're going to kind of condition this upon saying what area of your game that if you were to work on this one technical part of a stroke, that you would become a much more consistent shot maker with that stroke. I'm not talking about, hey, if you were to work on this one part, technique, forehand, serve, backhand, whatever it is, that all of a sudden you would now, after 30 days, you'd have this no-brainer, fail-safe dinger that you would hit every time for a winner. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about, so for me, on the forehand ground stroke, right? So I've already got 3 things listed here. And my first one, I'm giving you ideas. This is not what you should be actually. I mean, you could be, but it's just some ideas to maybe kind of jog some thoughts for you. But for me, first of all, is the forehand ground stroke. And where I get in trouble sometimes is I don't get the racket head out around, and I know the ball is round, right? But around the outside corner of the ball to kind of contain it. Sometimes I get a little bit too much of the inside part of the ball when I make contact, and I get kind of a side spin. And I'm really looking more for a pure top on that forehand groundie if I'm not going to play a slice, right? So for me, the first thing I put down was, let's get around the outside corner of the ball on the forehand ground stroke. The second thing I wrote down for me in terms of technique, and again, this is all about consistency, is on my serve. I've got to make sure that my toss stays out in front, whether it's a first serve or whether it's a second serve, so that I can generate an extra nanosecond of racket speed, right? So I get a much higher quality spin on my serve. And then on my return to serve, I've just got to make sure that I react to the direction of the incoming serve, whether it's forehand, whether it's a backhand, or maybe it's right at me. But I've got to make sure that the initial response is to get my shoulders turned, right? And not think racket back or not think anything else. Because if the shoulders don't get turned, then it doesn't matter if you've got racket back. It just, you don't get the same type of quality. At least I don't. Now for you, it might be something different, right? But write down 1 or more things. I put down 3 possible things there for you. You could add more. And so, all right. So let me know right now in the comment section, if you want to tell me one thing, one technical thing that you think that you need to work on for the next 30 days, go ahead and drop it into the comments area. And it's more for me just to make sure that you guys understand how we're doing this exercise. Larry, thanks for being with us today. Mike Rogers, good to have you on board today. And okay, I'm assuming that we're all okay then. Let's go on to the second category, which is going to be tactics. And tactics is not really technique. Tactics is more, for example, for me, I've got to always be thinking about trying to serve more right to the body. Whether it's singles, whether it's doubles, I've got to make sure that I don't get in that mindset that, well, I got to serve away from this opponent, because I'm sort of hoping that either it's an ace, or I'm hoping that that the ball just doesn't come back. Hey, Bill, thanks for joining us. So for me, one of the big tactical things I've got to be thinking about, and again, has nothing to do with technique, but is thinking I got to serve more to the body. And especially on a big point, right? On a big point, I want to make sure that serving to the body for me is really high percentage, right? I mean, I'm not flirting with down the tee with that sideline there. I'm not flirting with it sort of going out wide. or maybe slicing out wide on the deuce side, where I'm getting too close to the line. But really, the problem with that is that if it's a big point and I kind of bring it in a little bit, now I'm putting it right into the honeypot of that returner. So for me, it's really more, I want to serve more to the body. The second thing that I wrote down, and again, this is not something that only to sort of jog your thinking about tactics, is especially in singles, I got to be thinking about occasionally throwing in that drop return to serve off of a second serve, right? And so for me, it's obviously you got to be set up by disguise initially, where you take a second serve and I'll take that slice backhand and kind of drive it just either cross court deep or right at the body, back there. But occasionally I've got to have the same setup look, and I want to make sure that I play a second serve, return a serve, dropper often enough that even if I lose the point, that I've got them thinking that when they go for their second serve, that they got to be looking for it. And you know what happens? Sometimes you get some double faults out of that. So I just want to make sure that I'm tactically trying to make sure that there's some doubt in that server's mind. Now, look, who would drop shot a second serve, return to serve in doubles? Well, lots of times you play against someone who loves to stay back, and why not? Right? Why not throw it in there? So, all right. And Mike is saying, since I only have a slice backhand, would developing a drive topspin backhand be too much as a one thing? I don't think so, Michael. I really don't. But we're talking more than 30 days. It could be a 30-day exercise for you to where you get it. Obviously, you've got to have the right instruction, and the right instruction has got to be super simple. It can't be overly complicated. Hopefully you're not looking at, Dominic Thiem or one of these guys with these huge, massive one-handed backhands and thinking that's your model. I'd be going to your buddy Jeff Jacklich up there in Lafayette, and if that's what you want to work on, then I would get out in the court with him and just say, what's the simplest way that I can learn to play a topper? We're not looking like massive team like topspin, but yeah, for sure. I think that would be fine. And then the third thing I wrote down here for tactics would be, when I get a ball, I'm in a rally, baseline rally, and this is in singles, sometimes in doubles, because just like I said before with that second serve, return to serve, you get a server who stays back. And so what I'll do, if I get the right ball on my forehand, and typically in singles, it's a hair to my left towards my backhand side, not way over in the backhand side, where it's a classic, run around inside out type of thing. But if I get a ball just a hair to my left, which I could play with my backhand, I'll get around it and I'll look to go ahead and play that high kind of topper, not heavy, but semi-topper looper deep to their backhand. And assuming that's a right-handed player over there, I can just feel off of it that, this is a high-quality looper. I'm coming in, and I play that as an approach shot. So those are three different tactical ideas for you. You could write down more if you want, but for right now, let's go on to the mental thing. So the mental thing, there's so much that we could do here with the mental part of the game. Primarily for me, I've got to make sure that I continue to practice my between points routine, that 4 parts between points routine, because when I get into a match, right, and even if it's just a fun match, I got to make sure that I don't get into some sloppy habits, right? A fun match, meaning a practice match or practice sets, or like what I will do with Owen today at 8:45. We're going out in the grass, court number 7 on the grass, and we're going to go for 75 minutes, and we'll eventually play some points. But I've got to make sure that part of that time I'm actually practicing my between points routine, so that when I get into a real match, whether it's a tournament match or a league match, or even I get together with a buddy and we play some sets, or we play some doubles. I don't want to get sloppy. I don't want to get sloppy with not staying disciplined to my between points routine. So that's one of the things mental that I should write down. the other thing I wrote down here under mental is I want to make sure that when I react to chunking an easy ball, right, or missing a ball, I'm going cross court or up the line and I miss it, I miss it a hair wide because my thought was, well, I'm just going for the line for whatever reason. And I think too often we think to ourselves, I think our perception is we got to play closer to the lines than we really do, because, as our good friend Jeff Jacklich always says, is let them touch the ball. There's not a problem with your opponent participating in you winning that point. And so for me, the magic question for me, I think I got from Daniel Coyle's book, The Talent Code, was when I miss an easy ball or when I miss it wide, I hit it cleanly, but it goes wide or goes deep or whatever. I want to tell myself, rather than being critical. And look, I mean, we can be self-critical outwardly where other people can hear it, or we can say it inwardly. That doesn't help for the next time. So for me, the magic question for me is, well, what I meant to do instead. And what I meant to do instead is not a critical thing. It really tells my brain, next time, let's do this instead, rather than being critical and go, man, you're an idiot. How could you possibly do that? Whatever you say to yourself. And, I've had some pretty nasty self-talk over the years after missing an easy ball or something like that. And it's not great. So, so there are a couple ideas mental that I would write down on my worksheet, or that I have written down on my worksheet, just to give you some ideas. Tennis 979, stay focused and breathe deep. Okay, how are you going to practice that for 30 days? You got to figure out how you're going to, if that's something you wrote down in the mental column. And then the fourth column is physical, and physical is for me, I've got to discipline myself to continue to do my sprints twice a week. And, we got the great Bill Patton on here today, and we talked about this before, where, and Bill is an expert in visual tennis, meaning how do you track the ball better? The whole science behind, see the ball better, watch the ball better. For me, what I do is I've got an exercise where I do sprints twice a week from one end of the court to the other, right? And so what I will do is obviously get off to the side of the net. So because I want to run the whole distance, the 120 feet from fence to fence. But before I start, when I'm on the back fence, I look out towards that fence I'm running towards, and I find a spot. And if it's a fence over there with no windscreen, what you can do, and I think I got this suggestion from the great David Schermerhorn, why not take a tennis ball and about head high, just push it into one of the openings in the fence over there on that far fence, and then go on back to where you start. And if you've got a windscreen over there and you can't do that, find a spot on that fence that you're running toward. It could be the crosses of the fence posts, or it could be a stain maybe over there, something. But what I do twice a week is I got to do my sprints, and I don't do a ton, maybe 5 or 6, but where I run towards looking at that spot and making sure I'm running in a way that my head is really running smoothly, right? It's not bouncing up and down. Lots of guys out there are super quick, fast from point A to point B, but because of the way they run, their head is bouncing up and down, their eyes are bouncing up and down, and they're not making great visual contact with that incoming tennis ball. And when you don't do that, I mean, first of all, your spacing, when you arrive to set up for your next shot, whatever that is, your spatial distance away from the path of the ball is inconsistent, right? It's not exactly where you want to be, the spacing part. And so now what happens, you've got to improvise stroke technique. And if you want to become a better shot maker, meaning becoming way more consistent, then start with your spacing. Make sure that your spacing is super consistent. So for me, that's the reason I do that drill. That's the reason I do the sprints, is so that I can run in a way where I've got that spot on the back fence over there as not jumping up and down, bouncing up and down, trying to keep it really, really quiet over there. And that's just simply now you're training your way to run in a way so that you can visually track a moving tennis ball a whole lot better. And again, spacing becomes more consistent, your contact point becomes way more consistent, and everything becomes much more efficient stroke technique wise. So that's one of the things I wrote down for physical. What else did I put here? Let's see. Stretching. So I was never a big stretcher, didn't do a lot of stretching until maybe the last 7 to 10 years. And I don't do a lot. I'm not in the yoga studio. I suppose if I got in there on a regular basis, I would play better tennis. But I do enough right now well, let me back up. I need to do enough. I need to do enough on a regular basis. And for me, it doesn't have to be a ton. But I've got a bar. I've got one of these chin-up bars now, right? That you put between the door jamb. And I don't use it for pull-ups and chin-ups. I just use it to kind of stretch out. I just hang to really try to decompress the spinal area, especially my lower back. Try to keep that open as much as possible. I do, child's pose a lot to stretch out the back, and then some other things to stretch out the hamstrings. I do believe the hamstrings are like ground zero for our bodies. Anything that could go wrong kind of starts there. So I've got one of those roller sticks. Look, maybe not for you. Maybe you're already a yogi and you're doing all the stuff, and that's great. So maybe there's something else physical that you need to work on. The other thing I wrote down here is to make sure that I continue to eat right. And for me, that's simply, what do I eat? What don't I eat? And it's all based on, look, I want to be able to go out there tomorrow. I want to be able to go out there day after day after day, not only feel super energetic naturally, but I want to be able to have some focus and clarity in the court. So I want some mental stuff from being able to, that I would get from eating right. I want to be able to have recovery. I want to be able to sleep better. I want to reduce all the inflammation from all the tennis, all the off-court stuff. So for me, I have to make sure that I stay in a good habit. And look, I got my wife, Mai, who's a professional baker. And I'm telling you, it's some really good stuff, and thankfully she's not continuing, she doesn't, she's got a private business here in the desert, and thankfully she's not, making extra all the time. But from time to time she does. I still have to stay disciplined I hate to use the word diet. I just can't stand that word. But you guys know what I mean. And look, if you want some ideas, you want some suggestions on, what I do for my eating thing, what I don't do. If you want to lose some weight, whatever that is, just go ahead and direct message me or shoot me an email, brent@webtennis.com, and I will help you. So guys, all right. So assuming you've filled this thing out now, right? You've got some ideas under each one of the 4 categories. Let's go back to the first category, which is technique, right? And I want you to look at the different things that you wrote down, and you're going to pick out one. I want you to pick out one thing under that technique column and write down and down below where it says choose one. I want you to write that in there. So for me, I'm looking at forehand, around the corner, serve, toss out in front, return to serve, shoulder turns. I'm going to write down right now, forehand, I got to come around the corner. So that's my one thing under technique. All right. So go ahead and do that. And let's see, Michael wrote, let my opponent hit the ball rather than playing too close to the lines. Yeah, absolutely. Good. So that's technique. Let's go over to tactics. All right, we'll go to the second column under tactics, and whatever you've written down there, take a look, review it. For me, I've put serve more to the body. I put dropper on the return to serve, second serve, from time to time. And then I put that forehand looper. And I'm going to go with that forehand looper as my thing, as my one tactic that I need to work on. All right. Yours could be different. Yeah, I'm just giving you ideas. You know your game. Let's go to the third one, under mental. And whatever you've written down there, whatever the different types of things you need to work on under mental, I want you to choose one and write it down where it says choose one in that third column. So for me, I've got to do a better job when I miss a shot of asking myself that question. Well, or not even, it's not even a question. Well, what I meant to do instead, and sometimes what it means is, hey, next time I'm going to bring my target in an extra couple of feet. That was way too close to the sideline. Next time, what I meant to do instead was I meant to bring that thing in a couple of feet. Now, if it's a stroke where technique-wise, maybe your spacing wasn't right, and you got a little jammed, you got a little bit too close to the ball, well, what you could tell yourself, well, what I meant to do instead, and then rehearse a swing. If it's a forehand, for me, what I might do is I might go ahead, well, what I meant to do instead was come around the outside corner. And I will rehearse it so that I'm putting that thought into my brain. This is what I meant to do instead. So go ahead and write down that one thing under mental. And then physical, same exercise. I want you to choose one, which is going to be, I'm going to fill out mine, what I meant to do instead. And then under physical, and so under physical, I want you to choose one that you've written down. I'm going to go with adding an extra 15-minute stretching session to my one thing. Okay. All right. So I'm assuming that you guys now have got it filled out to the point where you've chosen one thing under each column. Those 4 columns: technique, tactics, mental, physical. Now what you're going to do is you're going to look at the choose ones that you've put in there, and you get to choose one of those, right? I want you to be thinking about, dang it, if I was to just work on that one thing, right? It could be technique. It could be what you wrote as choose one for tactics or mental or physical. I want you to look at those and really be honest with yourself. And it could be something that's not easy, right? It could be something that you've just been struggling with forever. But if you chose it and you did it for the next 30 days, and I'm not saying that you got to be in the court every day for the next 30 days to be able to do it, because we can do a lot of work off the court at home. We can do a lot of rehearsing of technique. Susanna, would you put split step under physical or technique? Put them under both. I don't know. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. But yeah, let's see. I would say that's probably more physical, working on that, because it does require some timing and that kind of thing. And so again, it doesn't matter. But guys, I want you to choose one thing out of those 4 choices you now have. And if you're up for it, I would love for you to type into the comment section what your one thing is that you're going to go after for the next 30 days. What I'm going to choose is forehand around the corner, forehand looper tactic. Choose one, what I meant to do instead under mental. Adding another 15-minute stretching session every day. The one I would choose for myself is going to be, and I really hesitate because I don't want to. I've always told you guys, don't put so much emphasis on technique. So, do what I say, not what I do. I don't know, whatever that thing is. But I'm going to go with the forehand corner in terms of technique, because my forehand ground stroke is definitely the weakest part of my game. And it's the weakest part of my game because because of that point of contact for me. I can make the point of contact perfect, spacing can be right, but for whatever reason, I end up getting a little bit too much of the back of the ball or sometimes the inside of the ball. So for me, I really got to get around the outside corner, contain the ball, and I get some racket head release when I do that. And so for me, if I was to work on that, and I'm going to, because we're going to come back here in a month, and I'm going to see how you guys are doing on your one thing. But if I was to do that, what am I saying? If I'm going to, for the next 30 days, come around the forehand corner, the outside corner of the ball. And once you get the feeling of, and I don't know how long it's going to take you to be able to start feeling more confident with your one thing, but it's going to make a big difference in my game. I know that, and it's going to be more confidence, right? I'm not going to be hitting more winners. I'm not looking for that. I am looking for. I'm just looking for consistency, and consistency for me is all about confidence, right? So, all right, what do we got here? Susanna's going with a toss. So, Susanna, I would ask you to be more specific with your toss. What do you mean with your toss? Is that technique in terms of your tossing motion? Is that toss placement in terms of trying to get more racket speed? Tennis 979, kick serve deep into the service box. Okay, so great. Is that technique or is that tactic? Do you already have that serve? So technically you don't need to work on it, or is it a tactical thing where I just need to do it more? Susan's going with return to serve, the initial response. Yeah, I mean that was a big thing, or that is a big thing for me. That my initial response off the return to serve is to get the shoulders turned, right? And my racket goes back. My racket gets prepped when I do that. I'll give you a little key here on that, Susan, is that I have to make sure that as the toss goes up, my opponent is going in their tossing motion, that my hands on the racket are really, really relaxed. I'm not squeezing. And we can do that, right? If we get a little tense, well, the tension initially starts in our hands. We start to clench the racket. And if you have too much grip tension in your sort of waiting to see which side the serve's coming to, your forehand or backhand, you can react to it, but you're slower to react, and the chances are you don't get a full turn with your shoulders if you've got too much tension in your hands. And you think about it, when is the one moment where maybe we have to give a little bit of grip firmness on the racket? Just prior to contact. So all the other stuff leading up to that moment, the point of contact, we don't need to have any grip tension at all. So let's get rid of the grip tension in your ready position. Let's get rid of the grip tension as the toss goes up, so that, and as they make contact, don't all of a sudden clamp down. Make sure that you stay relaxed so that you can get a nice, quick, clean shoulder turn. Hope that helps. David, spacing and shoulder turn. Yeah, David and I hit a couple times a week this summer up Steamboat Springs, and yeah, I would say, David, that would be something, because you've already got the strokes, and most of the players here already have strokes that are plenty good, right? So it's much more about being consistent with your spacing. What's the spatial distance you want to have away from the path of that incoming ball, so that, and it's different for everyone. I could show you what my idea on the forehand or the backhand or whatever it is, but it might be different for you for whatever reason, and it doesn't matter what that reason is. So find that spatial distance away from the path of the incoming ball. And look, David, you and I worked on that this summer. When you hit a forehand or backhand that you absolutely loved, the first response a lot of times is going, yeah, baby, as opposed to, dang, man, I want to do that again. And so when you hit the ball the way you want to, rather than congratulating yourself, is instead go ahead and go, what was my spacing on that? Because typically what happens, your spacing is the thing that helps you create the stroke that you want. If you don't have the right spacing, then you know what, as I said early on, then you're just improvising stroke technique. And that's where we kind of get away from that, from being confident, right? Mark Jordan, Major Dan, play aggressively. offensive serves and forehands don't lapse into a defensive mindset. Okay, but there are times when you have to smartly play a defensive shot. You just can't look at every possible ball as an offensive opportunity. And I think the other thing too is when and look, I'm not saying that you shouldn't play aggressively. When I think of playing aggressively, I think of court position. I don't think of technique, right? I think of, can I continually put myself into the right court position so that my opponent over there is thinking, man, either they got to go for a winner up the line, I'll give them a couple feet, to my right, a couple feet to my left, or they want to go for the perfect topper lob over me, fine and dandy. But I want to put that pressure on them aggressively over and over again by putting myself on that next best court position over and over again, so that my opponents think that they got to go for it. And so in terms of, you're saying offensive serves and forehands, that's fine and dandy if you're consistent with it. If you're going for an offensive serve and you're not making that first serve often enough, and then you're having to go into a second serve, I don't know, man. So think about this. If you're thinking about playing aggressively, think more about court position. How could you consistently put yourself into the right spot that forces that opponent over there to have to do something? Susanna, releasing it at eye level and placement. Okay, good. Super easy to practice for 30 days. In fact, it's so easy on the toss, Susanna, that you're going to get bored. And any of the stuff that we choose is our one thing. We're going to get bored at some point. And that's when one of the things could be, I should have, another thing here, another column that says, hey, when you get bored working on that one thing, your final one thing, which is right down here at the very bottom, which is this right in here, stay disciplined to keep doing it. Don't give up. And especially if you're not getting the results you want right away, or if you're at day 21 and it's not happening yet, don't give up. Just keep going. And look, 30 days is a reasonable amount of time. It may take you 35. It may take you 40. Who cares? But you got to stay disciplined to working on that one thing. Tennis 979 technique. My kick serve has too much spin and not enough pace, so it's middle of the box and bounces to return to strike zone. Yeah. So try this. Try keeping your toss further in front, not behind you, because everyone says, well, on your kick serve, you got to place the toss above your head or actually behind you. And I don't know what your age group is, Tennis 979, but if it's like mine, or most of the players out there who are trying to work on their game, senior players, the further you put your toss behind you, the reality is you can't generate enough racket speed back there to be able to get the type of power you want, and to be able to type of quality upspin, topspin that you want. So the ball has some bounce, and if you get good at it, so it's got some kick. So I put my toss in front, even on a kick serve, and the way, and the reason there is, number one, is I want to generate some racket speed, that extra nanosecond I get to generate racket speed because the ball's in front. But the way that you are allowing the swing path to generate that kind of spin is you got to stay sideways at contact. You cannot open up those shoulders too early. And so what I would advise you on that is, let's keep that toss in front. I got a couple minutes here now, and then I gotta scoot out in the court. Mr. McIntosh and I have got a hitting session this morning at 8:45 Pacific. All right, guys. So look, I hope this has helped. I hope this has helped you kind of figure out what's that one thing. And look, it's up to you now to discipline yourself to go ahead for the next 30 days and work on this thing. And if it's technique, then if you don't know what you should be working on, shoot me an email, brent@webtennis.com, and I'll go ahead and give you some ideas, right? If you're thinking about tactics, there's something, you've got the technique, but you should be doing more of this tactic, then find a practice partner, and set it up to where you you recreate match play situations that are that tactic that you want to do. And just say to the guy, hey, look, would it be okay for the next 10 minutes if we did this thing? And then you can have the next 10 minutes and work on something if you want to. Most players go, fine, I'll do it. And no, I've got nothing I want to work on. All right, I'll take the next 20 minutes, whatever. If it's mental, then you can do a lot of that work, not only on the court, but you can do it off the court as well. You can do some visualization, which I love. I mean, before tournaments, the night before a tournament match, I really see myself playing well, right? I think I put out something yesterday about there's a big difference between trying to think of yourself winning as opposed to play well. I want to see myself play well. And I also want to be realistic with my visualization. I'm playing well, but I don't win that point. And I want to visualize, how do I respond after not winning that point? And I want to have this really great positive visualization, right? Of looking at myself as if I'm a spectator. How am I walking back to the baseline after I've lost that point and played well, right? Of course, you want to see yourself playing well and winning points as well. And then if it's physical, hey, come on. I mean, look, I've been saying for so long, the fastest way to become a better player is to get the kitchen right. And if you've got any questions about that, about what to eat, what not to eat, when to eat, I can help you, right? I can tell you what I've been doing. I made some big changes a couple of years ago, March of 2018. And for the next 2 years, for those next 2 years until March of this year, I've had my very best 2 years in terms of national titles, team, USA World Cup team thing, all that. And just feeling better about my tennis. So if you want some help, let me know, Brent@webtennis.com. Guys, hope you found your one thing. And again, even if you don't have any questions about it, I'd love to know what that is. Just shoot me an email, Brent@webtennis.com. And, we'd just love to kind of hear it, read it, respond to you, all that good stuff. Hey, Dan, Fountain Valley School alum. You're welcome, Tennis 979. Al Yearwood. Man, one of the great senior players out there. And talk about a guy who is disciplined to working on his game and doing all the right things. This guy, Memphis, Tennessee, one of the great Southern accents. Oh, dear Lordy. Al, thank you. Thank you very much. And Susanna, you are welcome. Guys, I got to scoot. Looking forward to hearing from you. Brent@webtennis.com. And as always, come on now. Got to get out there today and help someone else have a spectacular